Welcome. So this week we're going to learn Parshas Naso. So the Parsha starts like this. Naso is Rosh B'nai Gershon. Levi had three sons, Gershon, chacham, Merari. So it says here like this. Count the Rosh B'nai Gershon, Gam Heim, Lebeis Avoisam, Lemishpechaisam. So it says count the Beis Avos is the mishpach is the shevet, and Beis Avos is the clan or whatever it is, the Beis Av. Each of these was a Beis Av. Gershon was a Beis Av, and each of the three sons had their own Beis Av, and they had their own Nasi, their own head. There were three different groups. So you count them Lebeis Avoisam, Lemishpechaisam. First it says Lebeis Avoisam, and then it says Lemishpechaisam. B'nai Merari, the pasuk says later, Lemishpechaisam, Lebeis Avoisam. First it says Mishpechaisam, and then it says Beis Avoisam. So here it says first Beis Avoisam, and then Mishpechaisam. Merari is the opposite, Mishpechaisam, Beis Avoisam. And before, at the end of Bamidbar, where it says the Pekida of Kahas, Naso is Rosh B'nai Kahas M'toich B'nai Levi, L'mishpechaisam, L'beis Avoisam. First the Mishpechaisam, and then Beis Avoisam. Just like Merari, Mishpechaisam, Beis Avoisam. By Gershon, it says in Beis Avoisam, Mishpechaisam. What is this? Why? Also, we find a difference a little bit later. When you're doing the Eile Pekudei Mishpechais HaKahasi, Kol ha'oived Baal Mayed, Asher Pakad Moshe v'Aaron, Al-Pi Hashem, B'yad Moshe. Moshe v'Aaron made the Pekida with Hashem's instructions, B'yad Moshe. Moshe made the Pekida. Then it says by Merari, same thing, Asher Pakad Moshe v'Aaron, Al-Pi Hashem, B'yad Moshe. It says again, B'yad Moshe. But by Gershon it says, Asher Pakad Moshe v'Aaron al-pi Hashem. Does not say B'yad Moshe. So what is that? So the Dazakenu says that by Gershon, that how do you count them by B'yad Moshe? He used to go into their tents, into their homes, and he used to count them. And that's how he made the Pekida. But by Gershon, he didn't go in. He stood outside, and Hashem told him how many were in there, and he tallied that, and then he went to the next house. So it was not B'yad Moshe. So how do you explain this? So Abarbanel asks a question. All these Pekidas, it actually starts at the end of Bamidbar. At the end of Bamidbar, it says, as I said before, Naso is Rosh B'nai Kahas M'toich B'nai Levi, L'mishpechaisam, L'beis Avoisam, and it goes through the whole Pekida, what they should do. Then what their job is. Then it says Gershon, the beginning of Naso, it says Gershon. Naso is Rosh B'nai Gershon, Kam Heim, L'beis Avoisam, L'mishpechaisam, and then it says Merari. So Rabbi this, why the split? They should all be together. Why does Kahas come at the end of Parshas Bamidbar, and then Gershon and Merari come in the beginning of Naso? Why is it split? So Barbanel says that the reason why Kahas comes first is Kahas was the Noisei Arain. They had the more chashav job, so they were first. But Gershon was the oldest. Gershon was the Bechar. So to be chaylik covered for Gershon that he was not the first, they put, this is what Barbanel says, they put the Chazal who did this, who set the Parshas, they put Kahas at the end of Bamidbar, and Parshas Naso starts, Naso Rosh B'nai Gershon, to give cover to Gershon. So that also would explain what the B'yad Moshe, that Moshe is coming to count you. Moshe is a Kahas man, and he's coming to count Gershon. Gershon is older, so it's really wasn't the Chvaydam of Gershon that a member of the Kahas who's younger will come to count them. So therefore, there was no B'yad Moshe. He just went over outside, and Rebbeinu Shalom told him how many were inside. Whereas By Kahas and by Merari, he actually went inside and he made the count. But by Gershon, to be chaylik covered for him, so that's why he didn't do it. That explains these psukim. So what do we do with the Beis Avoisam, the Mishpachaisam? Where by Gershon it says first Beis Avoisam and then Mishpachaisam, and by Kahas and Merari it says first Mishpachaisam and then Beis Avoisam. How do you explain that? So if you look in the beginning of Parshas Bamidbar, Rashi says like this. A long parsha till we get there. Okay. L'mishpachaisam l'beis avaisam. What does this mean, mishpachaisam l'beis avaisam? How do you explain that? So Rashi says, mishpachaisam da minyan kol shevet v'shevet. You need to make a pekida, a census, a count of every shevet. L'beis avaisam. What does beis avaisam mean? You don't count the beis av. Misha aviv mishevet echad v'ima mishevet acher yakom al shevet aviv. The Beis Avoisam means that how do you establish the minion of each shevet? By going according to the father. If the father is from this shevet, the mother is from shevet acher, you go bus with the father. So there really is no count of the Beis Avoisam. It's just the Beis Avoisam is telling you that how do you count the minion of the shevet? You go according to the fathers, not according to the mothers. So there really is no pekida of Beis Avoisam. So I think so. That's what it says. Mishpachaisam Beis Avoisam. So I'm thinking it could be that by Gershon again to mollify him and to sort of compensate for cause taking precedence, you want to mollify Gershon. So first you put him at the beginning of Naso, and then you also make sure it's not Biad Moshe. And one more thing, L'beis Avoisam L'mishpachaisam. If it's said in this order, that means there's a pekida for Beis Avoisam. That means not like Rashi says by Midbar. By Midbar, the pekida is Mishpachaisam. Beis Avoisam is a detail in the Mishpachaisam. How do you count the Mishpachaisam? You go by the father. But if Beis Avoisam says first, that means there's a pekida on the Beis Av. Besides the Pekid on the Shevet, you take a number, how many people are in the Beis Av. By the other ones, the Pekida was only the whole Shevet Levi. That's how you counted the whole Shevet Levi, Mishpachaisam. You didn't make a special count, this is how many people there are in cost. You didn't have to, you just put it into the tally. Shanky by Gershon, there was a published count of how many people are in Gershon, which also adds chashivas to Gershon. So by Kahas and Merari he says, Mishpachaisam l'beis Avoisam, you're only counting the Shevet Levi, and Beis Avoisam is telling you how to count it. By Gershon it says, no, since you're Bechar, we have a separate count of the Beis Av for you, so also Beis Avoisam l'mishpachaisam. That's all. Okay. Weiter. So then we come to the Parsha of Sotah. Ve'hevi ish es ishtoi el hakohen. So there's a Mishnah in Sotah that says, what happens? What do you do when you come to the Kohen? So the Mishnah says like this, and then he says like this, Biti, the Kohen tells her, Biti, many things that people do is because alcohol got them befuddled, or too much litzanas, or just maturity. So if you did this thing, okay, so the best thing is just be moida on this. He's trying to persuade her to admit that what she did. He didn't want that she should drink the Maimorim, because he didn't want that to be Moichek the Shem Hashem. That was a big thing, to be Moichek the Shem Hashem in the water. You have to dissolve it, to be Moichek. So the guy wanted to avoid this. So he talked to her, listen, a mensch is a mensch, people are human, sometimes things happen, you make a mistake, you drank too much, you were horsing around, and you're still immature, so things happen. Bad influence from neighbors, so maybe that could do it. Asi l'shmoya godel shenichtav b'kedusha. Do for the sake of the Rebbeinu Shalom Shem that was written in Kedusha, shelo yimochal amayim. It should not be erased when you put it into the water. This is what he says to her. He says to her. And then the Gemara says like this. Ton Rabbanan, Omer lefanei advarim shel Haggadah, u'maisim she'iru b'ksuvim rishayim. You tell her things that happened in the Torah. You show that people in the Torah also made mistakes, and you could admit it. Yehuda Haida V'loi Boish. Yehuda, the whole Maisa with Tamar, he was Maida. He wasn't too embarrassed to be Maida. Mahaya Soifai Nachal Chaya Olam Haba. Because he was Maida, he got a big schar. Reuven Haida V'loi Boish. Reuven's Bilbul, right? He was but the Doyim. He messed up the bed. And he was Maida. So he did something wrong and he was Maida. Now the Rambam brings this. You tell him what happened with Yehuda and Tamar, which is, the pasuk says exactly what happened. Reuven bepelegish aviv al pshotoi. You tell him as if he was actually mizana with the pelegish aviv. You tell it al pshotoi. That's what the Rambam says. By Yehuda v'Samar, there's no two ways about it. You know exactly what happened. You tell the story. By Reuven, so Kesef Mishnah says, Masha kosav al pshotoi. Kloimer diksiv bei vayishkav Reuven as bilo pelegish aviv. That he actually, slept with her. Avalofi emes chas v'sholom miloimer kein alois tzaddik. How could you say that he did it? The Gemara says in Shabbos, Kloimer Reuven chata ein alotoya. He didn't do it. So that's what the Kesef Mishnah says. But the Rambam says, even though he didn't do it, the Rambam doesn't disagree with the Kesef Mishnah. He didn't do it. But the pasuk seems that he did it. So you tell her the pasuk the way it is. So how do you understand this Rambam? You're going to tell her a lie, and you're going to want her to be chayzer b'tshuva because you're making up a story which is not true, and being moitzi laz and Reuven. This is going to be, online and in the newspapers that, the Kohen said, look what happened, people, so you can be moitzi laz and Reuven, and you're telling us something that's not true in order to get us to be moida. How was the pshat in the Rambam? So I think it's like this. When the Torah says, like, V'hi kizok na melech shloim, that's one of the things that it says in the Gemara Shabbos. Hitu nosha v'slavovoi, ozban shloim bama, I'll call it Gvoyes, he went l'shikutz malachama, to avoid the Zoras, and he built these bombers to avoid the Zoras, and it's not true. It's just not true. And the Gemara says it's not true. The Gemara proves it from the Psukim. It wasn't mamish like David, but to do such an avera, Shlomo Melech's going to go do avodah zarah. It's different. It's not true. So why does the pasuk say it in that way? If it's not true, why does the pasuk say it that way? So the answer is that the pasuk. This is it's everyone knows Tanakh is not a history book, but it kind of is. But this is Yirmiyah writing. He's writing about what Shlomo did. So he is criticizing him because he should have. That's the Gemara says. Why does it say that he did all these things? Because his wives were doing all these things, and he was busy learning and writing Koheles and writing Mishlei and sitting in the Medrash, and he just gathered all these wives for political reasons, and he left them alone, and they did whatever they did. So the Navi criticizes him for what he did. That's why it says in this lashon. Ke'ilu he did it, even though he didn't do it. But the Navi uses such a lashon to criticize him. It doesn't just say, He says that he actually did it, which is a way of expressing the criticism. When it says on Reuven, Vayishkav as Pelegish Aviv, Vayishkav was the Lashon of Vayishkav, it says that Lashon, it's to criticize him for what he did. He did something which he shouldn't have done. So the Pasuk criticizes him by expressing it in the Lashon of Vayishkav. However, the Rambam is saying, the Kohen tells her, of course it didn't happen. But if the criticism is something that couldn't possibly be true, then it's not a criticism. Everybody knows it's a chayzik. If it was impossible for Reuven to be shoichev with Pelegish Aviv, it was impossible. So when the pasuk says of Vayishkav, it's like meaningless. What do you mean? I mean, everybody knows it's an impossibility. It can't happen. Terence says it could happen. It didn't happen. We have rayas that it didn't happen, but it could happen. Therefore, when you say Vayishkav, then you are criticizing him, and it's a real criticism. Where if it was something which is dvorim b'telim, then it's not a criticism. So that's what the Rambam is saying. You see from the pasuk that such a thing is possible. Kipshotoi, it was possible that Reuven would have done such a thing. Did he do it? No. He was a tzaddik, he didn't do it. But the pasuk is saying, criticizing him for doing this means that it is a possibility. If it's a possibility, so you should learn from him that there's a possibility for you too, and it happened, and do tshuva and be chayzer. This is what the pasuk is saying, and that's why the Rambam says you tell him kipshatai. Not that you tell her that that's actually happened. You tell her that you see from the way the pasuk is written that it's a possibility. That's what you tell her. So you too have such a possibility. Okay. Now we come to the part of the Parsha. Daber l'avabon of Leimer, Kois Barchas Bnei Yisrael, Emor Lohem, and the Birchas Koyanim. So, there's a Gemara that speaks about what you're supposed to do by Birchas Koyanim. If a person has a bad chacham, then while the Kohen is during the Siyas Kapayim, then you should be mispalel for over a bad chacham. And the Gemara has a nusach. And when we do Birchas Kohanim, we have a nusach which is not quite identical to the Gemara, but it's basically the same nusach. And instead of taking out the Gemara brachas and speaking about the nusach in the Gemara, I'd rather speak about the nusach which is familiar to all of us. Now, not quite all of us, because some of us are Kehanim. And if I ever speak about this to a Kohen, they look at me blankly. I said, the Rebbeinu Shalom that you say, we don't say it. We're up there giving the brachas. But, it's in the siddur, and I want to say what it says. So the pasuk says like this. The pasuk, the Gemara and the way it's brought down in our siddurim. Rebbeinu Shalom, he's saying, he's mispal to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Ani shalach b'chalam ma'aser shalach. My chalam is belong to you. Chalam chalamti ben yidei mahu. I had a dream, and I don't know the interpretation of my dream. Yiratzim f'necha Hashem Elokai v'Elokai b'sai. Yeskin the Rebbeinu Shalom. Shiyu kol chalamoisai olai v'kol Yisrael l'toiva. In my chalam, I can dream about myself. I could dream about other people. Everything should be good. Ben shechalamti al atzmi, ben shechalamti al acherim, ben shechalmu acherim alai. If I dreamed on myself or other people, im toivim heim. If my chalam is good, I'm not sure what my chalam means. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not good. If it's good, chaskim v'amtzim, be mechazik the chalam, v'yiskaimu bi v'hem b'shem kaimim mi, and the people I'm dreaming about, k'chalamis shal Yosef HaTzadik. V'im tzrichem refuah, if they need a refuah, then refuim, you should heal them. K'chizkiya melch Yehuda Mechalyoy, and now we give 5 examples of refuah. 5 examples of refuah. Chizkiya melch Yehuda Mechalyoy. Chizkiya was sick, and then he recovered from his sickness. Miriam and Neviah mitzarata. Miriam had a tzaras, and she was and she was healed. Nama mitzarata. Naaman also had tzaras, he was healed. Kamei mora al de Moshe Rabbeinu. The Mei Mora, when they came there and the water was bitter, Moshe Rabbeinu healed the Mei Mora. It says Kani Hashem Refacha, so but the Lashon of Refuah somehow is shaykh to that. But another example is the Mei Mora. Ukumei Yericha de Elisha. There was bad water, it was bad water by Yericha, and Elisha made it better, made it sweet. So you should have a refuah for my cholam, just like these 5 things. What are these 5 things? All right. Ukashem she'ofachtas killas bila marasha meklol levracha kein tapik kol chalamois elayv of Yisrael l'toiva. Just like you took the klolas of Bilam and you turned them over and you converted them from a klola, transformed them from a klola into a bracha, that's what you should do with all my chalaymas, that they should be transformed from klola to bracha. So first of all, what is this refuah? You need a refuah. A person has a beit chalam, he needs a hatava. You have to say chalmatava chazes, he's a hatava. And that's really what we say at the end. Kashem shefachtas kills bil marasha kol levrach ken tapik chal ha'moisai alive akosra l'toiva. That's hatava. That's hatava. You take the bad dream and you make it good. That's what you need for a chalam. So why go straight to the end? What's this whole interlude in the middle? We have a refuah, and you have these 5 cases of refuah. And what are these 5 cases of refuah? We don't know what a refuah is. You need a refuah. You want a refuah for a chalam, and then you see from tzaras and from meimora. What are these things? What is this? So, I want to say pshat like this. The Gemara says that if you have a chalam, it could be like one of, a little bit of a spark of nevuah. But usually it's not. The Gemara says usually a person dreams about what he thinks during the day. That's what a person dreams. So we're not talking about nevuah, the chalaymas, if you got a nevuah. If you got a nevuah, we'll leave that alone. These are normal chalaymas. A person has a chalam, and he doesn't know what it means. Could be it's a bad chalam. Could be. So what does that mean? He had a chalam, let's say. He had a chalam that his neighbor had a car crash, and he was taken to the hospital in critical condition. That was his chalam, right? Why would a person have such a chalam? Why would he have such a chalam? That means that in his chalam, in his subconscious, he was mekalel his neighbor. He has, and during the day, he meets his neighbor. It's all fine. Everything is good. Hello, how you doing? Da. But underneath, he has some latent aggressive feelings there. He hates him. There's something wrong there underneath. But maybe he doesn't even know it himself. Maybe it's in his subconscious that he seems to like him, but in his subconscious he's mekanim. He has a nicer car, he has a nicer house. He can't take it, but he doesn't know. He doesn't express it to himself. It's all in his subconscious. When he goes to sleep, the subconscious goes to work, and the subconscious comes out and says, "This neighbor, he should have a crash. He should go to the hospital." So what's happening here? This person has latent aggressive feelings, and in his dreams it comes out as a klala. He's giving a klala, he's giving an ayin hara, he's giving a klala to this neighbor. So where does that come from? It comes from a person who is not well, a person who is well adjusted psychologically and is healthy, is mentally healthy. That person does not want, even subconsciously, does not want his neighbor to crash. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want. Why? You have yours, I have mine. I'm learning. I'm happy. I have my family. What? But the person who can't take it, and that person is mentally off. There's something wrong with him. He is sick. He has a mental illness. I don't know if it's to the point where he's hospitalized, but he is not mentally well. So these dreams that he has, these angry, aggressive dreams where he's dreaming that something terrible would happen to another person, whether a neighbor or a friend or a family member or a stranger, but he's having these kind of dreams, that means that's coming from a sick place. It's coming from not from a place of wellness. So he needs a refuah. He needs a refuah. Not the dream needs a refuah, the dreamer needs a refuah. He has to be healed. This is not what you should be doing. You shouldn't have such dreams. However, a person is made, the nature of a person is that the body is self-healing. A person gets a cut, you leave it alone, it will heal, it will heal. You get a cold, it will go away. Unless a person is very, very gravely ill, a person has an illness, he recovers. The body is self-healing. However, the mind is not self-healing. If a person has a mental illness and you leave it alone, then he's not going to get healed. He's only going to get worse. He's not going to get better. If a person has this type of a mental problem, he's not getting better. He needs an intervention. Maybe he needs therapy, maybe he needs drugs, but at least he needs a brach of the kaihanim, an intervention to help him heal. A body, if your body is something wrong with your body, if it's not cancer or something, then you don't need the kaihanim's bracha for this. The Baruch Shalom made the body that if you leave it alone and you just don't do anything, it will heal itself. But if a person is mentally off, there's something wrong with him, it will not get better without an intervention. Something has to be done. So these five things that we mentioned, these are things. Chizkiah Melech Yehuda Mechalya. Chizkiah got better. Chizkiah was the first person who recovered from a serious illness. He recovered. So, in other words, people at his time, you got ill, you didn't recover. Your body didn't heal you. You didn't recover. But Chizkiah recovered from illness. So Chizkiah got a refuah, even though his body was not made to recover from by itself. People did not recover from serious illnesses. Chizkiah recovered. That's number one. Number two, Miriam and Tzarata. You don't recover from tzaras by itself. Tzaras doesn't go away. It's not like a rash that goes away. You have to be a tefillah or the kohen or whatever. Tzaras does not go away. But it went away. The Rebbeinu Shalom sent a refuah. Nama Tzarata. It doesn't go away. Sent a refuah. Meimora. Bitter water, if you leave it alone, is not going to become sweet. The bad water, if you leave it alone, will not become good water. All of these things needed an intervention, and Rebbeinu Shalom sent an intervention. He had the refuah, Chizkiah refuah, the tzaras went away, the water became sweet, the water became good. All these things were a refuah to something which does not have a refuah on its own. That's so we say the same thing over here. This mental illness that this person is suffering from, who has these horrible chalaymas about other people, this is not going to go away. But the Rebbeinu Shalom should send the refuah to take it away, even though on its own it will not go away. But this will only help for the future. That from now on he's going to have a refuah, and therefore, from now on, he's not going to do this anymore. So he will be healed, and will no longer have these horrible dreams about other people. But how about the dreams that he already had? The klala that he made, the dream that he had was a klala, an ein hara. He cursed the other person that he should crash and get hurt, and he should end up going to the hospital critically ill. That, the refuah is not going to help. The refuah is only going to help for the future. What's with the past? So that's what we say. So you took the klala of Bilam and you converted it to a bracha. So the klala of the dream that you already had, the Bilam should be mahapich that klala to a bracha, that nobody should be nizik from this dream that I already had. Thank you very much. I hope to see you next week.